alive and direct in the flesh. The mortal coil, the mics and the decks. Took some time just to get the shuffle right. Never chanced that a plot was hatched, inspired. Now my schemes advance in peace. My name's Doug. Sometimes I rap, I make beats. I do that on my Digitakt. I have a synthesizer singing to the tunings out of whack. This here's for all y'all came to rock. Whether you from Portmore to Portland to Porto to Port Hartford, North Oxnard, we on the beatbox like Flash doing that with the boom bap. Have y'all moving your expletive deleted? No need for cursing the verse like that jam with Heavy D. R.I.P. Spill the wine, dig the girl, the whole nine. So we major, though I'm fairly certain that this only minor chords player. But I'll gladly take correction. No X, we in the building. Cool Ducky represent. Let's go. 805 alive and Vivo. Do my thing for all the party people, my people. My people. 805 alive and Vivo. Do my thing for all the party people, my people. My people.
So, first off, I want to thank Loopop for setting this up. I had a lot of fun doing this, and honestly, I could say that I got to know my Digitakt a lot better because of this. I use the Digitakt for almost every step of this, and everything you heard is included in the project file for the Digitakt, which is going to be available for download. So, what I'm going to do now is just walk you through what's in that and basically how the song comes together. So, on Bank A, there are two patterns that are sort of the main sequence for this track. Pattern 1 is sort of the main variation, and what that is just all the Dreadbox Nymphes, and it's all, I think, preset 2. Just to be confusing, I renamed stuff before I put it on my Digitakt, and I'll have another note about another weird thing I did later. So anyway, to get these different variations, I just changed the filter settings and the start points. So for the ARP and the bass tone, they just lose a little bit of the attack that's on the original patch, like right here. And on the bass, it sounds like this. And then on the ARP, it sounds like this. And for the chords, because the tracks on the Digitakt are monophonic, they're basically just spread out over 6 tracks. And I took advantage of that to get some more variations within the chords themselves by further editing the filter and LFO settings. So I also have an LFO on every track but the bass. And it's just kind of, moving around the frequency a little bit just to get a little movement. And that's everything pretty much going on with this pattern, except for on the bass, there's just a little pitch bend right here. And it all comes together like this. So pattern 2 is basically the same thing with just some slightly different filter settings, and what I've done for the chord parts as well is also brought back the start point. And so it kind of sort of lets the patch kind of lay out for the verse parts. So it sounds like this. And, kind of, I guess I should say kind of the star of this show right here is this guy right here. This is the Retro Kits RK002. And it's a smart MIDI cable that let me play my Digitakt like a proper polyphonic sampler. So pattern 9 is the same tempo as patterns 1 and 2, and it's just one drum hit on step 5. Its only purpose was to serve as a marker, because what I did was record the chords into Audacity, because obviously I'd need more tracks for the drums, And the point of doing this in Audacity with the marker was that I wanted to be able to parameter lock the start points for one set of chords in the sequence and be able to just switch to the other by just changing the sample slot. So patterns 5 and 6 are just me putting that together. I added some drums, which I'll talk about more in a second. But what I figured out at this stage was what I actually wanted to do was chop up my sequence. And so I ended up resampling the bass and the ARP as well. But let's just hear how it sounds at this stage. So what I did was, I resampled the other parts, and then I ended up pitching them down, and they sounded like this. And I guess I forgot to mention that on pattern 10 here, we also have this little kind of vocal part. It's from the Waldorf M, and it's just two voices about an octave apart. And I just resampled that, so it sounds like this. Okay, so let's talk about the drums. They're mostly from the 6 mod 6. I have them on pattern 10 and 11. Pattern 3 and 11. 11 was the final one that I ended up going with. And so on track 1, we have the kick and the snare, and they're on the same track because originally they were in the whole pattern with everything else, and I was trying to save space. So there's nothing too exciting going on here except for there's a little bit of variation in the amp decay on the snare. And one more thing to note, I guess, is I got a little trick from Ivar Treaty, which was to use the high pass and the resonance on the high pass to boost the low end for the kick and the snare. So let's see here. So track 3 is actually that same snare. It's just kind of the middle part of it. And I used that because I wanted to get kind of like a clap thing going, like a subtle clap thing going. So it's a little bit after the snare. And I think it sounds pretty good. And track 2 is the hi-hat track, and I just used the open hi-hat and programmed in variations of the amp decay and velocity, and a little bit of filter settings just to kind of move it around a little bit so it sounds like this. And then I also used the kick from the ZAPS module, and that's this one here. And I just used it in conjunction with the kick on the 6 mod 6. And that's how it all sounds right there. So what I did then was just resample this whole thing, and I programmed it into the pattern, and it sounds like this all together. Okay, one thing that I forgot to mention was how I have the chords arranged in the pattern. So they're on tracks 4, 5, and 6 with different filter settings. So it's lows, mids, and highs. And the reason I do that, besides just shaping the sound, is that it's easy to drop parts out and then bring them back in like this. So that brings us to the vocal, and that's the one thing I didn't do on the Digitakt. I probably would have recorded straight to it, but you can only record 33 seconds at a time, so that doesn't really work. So what I did do was use an ancient program that might be older than some people listening to this, called Cool Edit Pro. And that's because I have an old Tascam US 144 interface that doesn't want to talk with my main computer, but my old compact that's still on Windows XP can run it just fine. So all I did was import that into the Digitakt, and then parameter locked it into the sequence so everything sounded nice and on beat. There were a couple little things that I added to the sequence as well, just little adjustments to the volume at certain points to make everything clearer. And finally, if you dig into the project, what you're going to find is that if you look at the vocal track, it's actually sped up and then slowed down in the pattern. And that's because I have this habit of recording samples at 45 and then pitching them down. It's something that's carried over into my synth-based production as well. And where I goofed was that I did it for the one-shots instead of waiting to do it for the parts that I was going to record into Audacity. So it's kind of a mess on here, but that's why things are kind of off. Anyway, that's that. I hope you enjoyed my track, and what I'm going to do now is just write out with the instrumental version of the track in case you just want to hear that and you don't want to hear my vocals. Peace.